ready to kind of like level up your trading game, but like not in the way you'd usually think.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about, like finding some secret formula or indicator.
Right. Yeah.
It's about something much more fundamental.
It's all about you.
Yeah. So in today's deep dive, we're kind of going inside our own heads a little bit. We're diving into this Lincfolio podcast episode, and they're all about self-awareness and mental health in trading.
It's so interesting how much time, like, we as traders spend looking at the markets.
Oh, tell me about it.
But, like, how much time do we actually spend looking at ourselves? That's what I think is so cool about the Lincfolio podcast. They're really emphasizing this whole mental game of trading, which, let's be honest, is often overlooked.
Totally. And you know what? They make a really good point. They talk about how even like the most seasoned traders, people who've been doing this forever.
Oh, yeah, they're not immune.
They can still fall prey to their emotions, especially, when things get really intense.
Absolutely, especially when you feel like you're going to miss out on something.
Oh, that FOMO is real.
Real. Like, think about that stock. Everyone was hyping it up, right? And you're sitting there and you're thinking, I got to get in on this. It's skyrocketing.
Yep. That's
FOMO taking control. And, what Lincfolio Podcast says, that's often how you end up buying high and then,
Yeah, you watch it crash and burn.
Exactly.
And that is not a fun feeling.
Not fun at all.
No, it's tough. So the Lincfolio podcast talks a lot about recognizing your emotions in the moment, which seems so simple, but...
Right. But it's not easy.
Can you kind of break that down for us? Like, why is that so important?
So imagine this. You're about to make a trade, and you're like, this feels right, but you haven't actually, looked at the charts. You haven't done your analysis.
You're going with your gut.
Just gut feeling.
Yeah.
That's that autopilot kicking in. But recognizing that feeling, that's the key. That's your cue to just hit pause for a second and think.
It's like that thing they said about trading being a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes. Such a good analogy. I mean, you wouldn't go all out in the first mile, would you?
No way. You'd be totally wiped out.
Exactly. It's about pacing yourself,
right?
Making smart decisions, not letting the market, make you do something rash. And the Lincfolio podcast, they call this emotional discipline.
Okay, I like that. Emotional discipline.
Yeah.
They give an example about this guy named Mike, this trader, who was like killing it at first, doing really well, but then...
Oh, yeah. Mike's story is a classic example of what happens when you don't pay attention to the mental game.
Yeah, he was like riding high, making great trades, and then... What happened?
He started to let his emotions get the better of him.
Oh, no. How so?
Every trade became super personal for him. A win, it was like this huge ego boost.
Yeah.
But a loss.
Ouch.
It was like a punch in the gut, a personal failure. And that, that's a recipe for disaster in trading.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then did his strategy start to change?
It wasn't even his strategy, really. It was more like his decision-making process just completely shifted. He went from, this calculated trader to someone who was basically trading on emotions.
Oh, no. And that's where things took a turn for the worse for him?
Yeah, he ended up making this one big trade purely based on how he was feeling. And, well, let's just say it didn't end well. He took a pretty big hit.
It's like, it's not enough to just know the market. You got to know yourself.
Right. And that's what I appreciate about the Lincfolio podcast. They don't just, point out the problem. They actually give you some tools to deal with it.
Totally. They had some really interesting strategies, and some of them were surprisingly simple.
Yeah, like that whole thing about checking in with yourself before you even open your trading platform.
Oh, yeah. Like starting your day with a little self-reflection.
Exactly. Not even thinking about, your watch list or anything like that. Just, how am I feeling today?
Yeah. It's so easy to skip that step, You just want to dive right in and see what the market's doing.
Right. But taking a moment to be like, okay, am I stressed? Am I feeling motivated? Am I anxious? That can make a huge difference.
For sure. And speaking of stress, they also talked about taking breaks, which seems kind of counterintuitive when you're trading, right?
Yeah, you feel like you got to be glued to the screen watching every tick.
Exactly. But they made a good point about how our brains actually work better when we step away and reset.
Yeah, it's like, when you're working on a puzzle and you just can't figure it out. So you take a break and then suddenly the solution just pops into your head.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like giving your brain a chance to catch up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what those breaks can do for your trading.
They also mentioned this thing called trade journaling. And I'll be honest, I've always struggled with that one.
Yeah, it's more than just tracking your wins and losses.
Right. What's the point, really?
So the way they explained it in the Lincfolio podcast was it's about connecting your emotions to your trades. Like, were you feeling super confident when you made that trade, or were you feeling unsure and maybe a little bit impulsive?
So it's not just what you traded, but like why you traded it.
Yes. Because once you start to see those patterns, like, oh, I tend to make riskier trades when I'm feeling stressed.
That's when you can actually start to make changes.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about that self-awareness, right? You can't fix what you don't know is broken.
That makes sense. It's like they say knowledge is power, but in this case, it's like self-knowledge is trading power.
I like that.
Another thing that really struck me was how important they said community is.
Oh, yeah, because trading can be such a solitary endeavor, especially these days when everyone's, trading from their home office.
Totally. It's easy to feel like you're the only one going through those emotional ups and downs.
Exactly. But when you have that community, that support system, it makes a huge difference.
It's like you're all in it together, even if you're not trading the same things.
Right. And even if you don't want to talk about specific trades, just having someone who understands the pressures and the emotions that come with trading, that can be huge.
And sometimes it's not even enough to just talk to your friends or your family about it, right?
Right, because they might not get it.
Exactly. Like, they mean well, but
they just don't understand the same way that another trader would, yeah.
And that's where, they talked about how sometimes you might actually need to reach out to like a professional.
A therapist or a counselor. Someone who's really equipped to help you deal with the mental stress of trading.
It's so true. Because trading, it's not just about, making money. It really does take a toll on you mentally and emotionally, especially if you're not careful.
Absolutely. And there's no shame in seeking help.
Not at all. It's interesting because that trader, Mike, that we were talking about, they actually talked about how he ended up turning things around.
Oh, yeah. Mike's story is actually really inspiring. He took a step back from trading and really focused on his mental health.
So what did he do? Did he, start meditating or?
He did. He actually started practicing mindfulness, which I thought was so cool that they highlighted that in the Lincfolio podcast. And he also started seeing a therapist to try to understand his thought patterns, his behavior patterns.
And I guess that helped him to see, okay, this is where I'm messing up.
Exactly. And once he started to address those underlying issues, his trading actually started to improve too. It's amazing how connected those two things are.
It's all about having that balance, right?
Totally. It's like you can have all the technical skills in the world, but if you're not mentally and emotionally in the right place,
it's not going to matter.
It's going to show up in your trading.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and this Lincfolio podcast was seriously packed with insights. If you had to pick just one thing, one big takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
It really comes down to this. Trading is a mental game, just as much as it's a numbers game. You've got to master your mind if you want to master the market.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself, take breaks when you need them, build that community, don't be afraid to ask for help, and maybe, just maybe, your trading will thank you for it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So for all of you out there listening, take this to heart. Your mental health matters, and it matters in trading too. And on that note, we're out of time for today's deep dive. Until next time, trade smart, but most importantly, trade well.